And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck On3, coming to you from Long Beach, California. It's Friday, May 31st, 2024, and I am back from Nashville with so much to talk about as it pertains to Oregon football recruiting. And joining me to break it down today is Scoop Duck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. This is the dynamic duo. But before we get into today's podcast, the Ducks Dish podcast is brought to you by Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are for this evening, but you should head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. With that being said, Justin, man, what a week it has been for just the site and for On3 getting to go out to Nashville. There's been no shortage of headlines. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great. It's been beautiful weather. It's been, like you said, it's been a phenomenal week. I love it. I love it when there's stuff to write about. I hate putting out fluff and filler. Sometimes we got to do it. We got to fill the voids. But this week we haven't really had to do that because there's been you've been killing it from the On3 event, and then there's been other news on top of that. So it's been a great week.
It's been super fun. Got to go out to Nashville for the On3 Elite Series. My first time out in the state of Tennessee and the furthest southeast I've ever been. Hoping to go further in that direction because if Dan Lanning and the Ducks keep recruiting like they're recruiting, there will certainly be reason to do just that. So Justin, for the viewers out here, we're just going to kind of give a rundown of some of my top takeaways from my time out in Nashville, talking to the premier football recruits in the country and a number of really coveted targets for Oregon. And let's just start it off with a heavy hitter. How about we talk about 5-star plus wide receiver Decorian Moore out of Duncanville, Texas. He's been in the headlines a lot lately as it pertains to Oregon, seeing that he recently decommitted from LSU and really is probably one of the top targets that are still on the board for Oregon.
Yeah. I mean, a guy that we've talked about before. I'm sure, I know we'll get your thoughts on meeting him and talking to him in person here in a minute, but just kind of the general feeling I believe at this point is it looks like, I think that this is Oregon versus Texas right now, with Ohio State closely lurking, if not right there with them. I think that's kind of the battle. I think a return to LSU seems unlikely. And as we know, when he decommitted from LSU, he basically, although you can't do this, he basically put a do not contact tag on his recruitment. So, we know he's got those, the schools in mind. And I think that's the battle. And, this would be a hell of a win for the Oregon staff to get him.
It would be huge. And I think it would be very fitting and in line with how Oregon's been progressing as it pertains to receiver recruiting under Junior Adams. It's just like he gets a crazy group and a crazy cycle, and then he just keeps one-upping himself. And that's certainly what he would like to do with Decorian. So, yeah, meeting Decorian and getting to talk to him was definitely one of the highlights. Just like behind the scenes, like it was myself and one of our new Ohio State writers, Mick Walker, that were there. We were like running all over the place trying to track him down because it was crazy weather in Dallas. So he was like really delayed, as were a lot of other guys getting out to Nashville. And when I finally got to talk to him, it was a great interview. I'll write that one up on Scoop Duck here in the near future. But you really get the sense, just to kind of back up what you said, it does really feel like it's Oregon versus Texas here. I think Texas probably has the lead, but I wrote in my Torres' take yesterday that he was one of those guys, just talking to the other writers from the other sites and talking to coaches and other people that were out there, that the kind of common talking point was like Oregon has probably a better shot in this one than a lot of people are giving them credit for. And that's even kind of operating off this assumption that, okay, maybe he does commit to Texas in the near future, but you and I can both agree that that's not going to mean the end of this recruitment. He is that caliber of a player that people will still be involved with him, but he loves the relationships at Oregon. He loves the environment out at Oregon. He for what it's worth, he showed up to the event in a Oregon backpack. So him, along with Keelan Russell, his quarterback at Duncanville, the SMU commit, he was out there as well. Those are two of the biggest names that we're going to have to continue to track in here in the 25 class.
Yeah, this dude's elite. I guarantee Oregon won't quit no matter what until the ink is dry in December with this one. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out for sure.
I think the tricky thing here, I mean, when you talk about Texas's advantage, there's a lot of family for him in Austin. I think the quote from his mom was saying that she could drive that highway between Dallas and Austin with her eyes closed. So you know how much family carries weight in a decision. Not to say that this is his mom's decision. Decorian's going to be making the decision when it's all said and done. But, we'd be silly to not mention that probably has some kind of an influence on the recruitment. And she herself gave a bunch of glowing remarks about Oregon, just basically saying, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but like everything about Oregon reminds me of Decorian. It was something along those lines. Chad Simmons did a great job with that interview over there on On3. So make sure you check it out. I mean, I feel like we've been saying it all week, Justin, but like there really is no better time to try us out. If you haven't at Scoop Duck, you can try us out for a month for just $1. We're heading into a crucial month of official visits out in Eugene for Dan Lanning and the Ducks in June. And then, after that, a lot of these guys are scheduled to come off the board. So bringing you content like this and me going out to Nashville, you guys are part of what makes that possible. So just kind of wanted to give a plug here because I think it's a great time.
Nope, you're dead on. It's really pretty much like it's really like championship month in terms of recruiting coming up in June. It's gonna be wild. So definitely a good chance to take advantage of that offer.
All right, we're here on the Scoop Duck YouTube channel. Max Torres and Justin Hopkins talking some Oregon football recruiting on a Friday, getting you guys your fill. We didn't have the juice this week, but we had Torres's take, so we're keeping you guys fresh with all the intel. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the Scoop Duck YouTube channel and drop a like on the video. Let us know what you're thinking about Oregon football recruiting. Justin, let's hop into our next guy here on the pod. One of the guys I was most excited, maybe the most excited to talk to out of the entire bunch that was out there was DJ Pickett, an elite cornerback DB out of Zephyr Hills, Florida, that was out in Nashville this week. He's the number one cornerback recruit according to the On3 rankings, and Oregon continues to shoot their shot in the Sunshine State. You could say that one of them landed earlier this cycle with Chavez Salmon Thompson, but he chose to reopen things. But if you're looking at Florida talent, I don't think the names get much bigger than DJ Pickett here.
No, and this is another one, that I was going to say this about Decorian Moore. If the University of Oregon was in Texas, I think they would hands down get Decorian Moore. I also believe that about DJ Pickett. If the University of Oregon was in the state of Florida, DJ Pickett might be committed already. I think Oregon's kind of been lingering there as a school that not really everybody's giving a heck of a lot of a chance to, because I think the feeling is, at least from what I understand, if he doesn't go to Oregon, he most likely will stay in state, meaning, Florida State, Miami, all three of those schools are up there in his recruitment. So I think that's kind of how you're looking at this recruitment. I know LSU and some others are in there, but it certainly seems like it's Oregon versus the in-state schools. And I think, you got to look at Miami and Florida, probably the most serious of the in-state schools. But tremendous young man. And again, just like Decorian Moore, this dude's absolutely elite at the cornerback position. I can only imagine these two going at each other in practices if they were on the same team. So I think Oregon's in it. It's just going to be a matter of distance once again, I think, is going to be the key here.
And there's a number of guys, Justin, where you can throw on their highlights, you can see their social media posts and all of this stuff, but that was another huge benefit from just being at this event, just getting to see these guys and what they look like physically. DJ Pickett is every bit of 6'4" for a corner, which is just insane. Dijon Lee from Mission Viejo, California, just kind of an hour or so away from me. He's probably one of the top West Coast guys. He's super tall too. He might be close to 6'4", but like DJ Pickett is giant for a corner, but he's obviously light on his feet. He's around 180 pounds, and a lot of these highlights that we're showing here on the YouTube channel show him putting in work at wide receiver. But just to kind of shed a little bit of light on the recruitment and the interview I was able to get with him for our viewers and listeners. He talked about how, people will say what they will about Oregon and it's far away and all that. But when I'm there, it's strictly business. I'm just focused on, what the program has to offer and what they've done. He talked a lot about the relationships that he has at Oregon, with Dan Lanning being a big one, Chris Hampton being another one. And this kind of goes to another point, just more broadly, Justin, about recruiting. We'll learn about some of these guys. The fans will learn about some of these guys, sophomore, junior year. But like, really, the reality that I've learned is like, if you're really tapped in, if you're really plugged in, about some of these guys in 8th grade, which sounds kind of weird. But with DJ Pickett, he said, I've been knowing Dan Lanning since I was in 8th grade and he was at Georgia. So you need, I mean, maybe not need, but it only helps you to have that long-standing of a relationship when you're trying to pull someone across the country out to Oregon. So I think Oregon does have a better chance, kind of like we said with Decorian Moore, than people are giving them credit for. I think they're running behind Miami. And then LSU was another big one that looms large in his recruitment. Georgia's there, but I don't think they've ever been really viewed as a heavy contender or a favorite, I should say. They can get whoever they want. Obviously, it's Georgia. But yeah, he'll start his official visits in LSU, in Baton Rouge at LSU this weekend, but he is going to be one of the big names that we have to watch for in June, because he's probably the single biggest name for that June 21st weekend.
Yeah, no, he's a stud. It'll just be interesting to see how this one plays out. And of course, even like, let's say he commits to Oregon, those in-state schools are gonna work on getting him on campus this fall. So his recruitment won't be, done by any means, but that would be an absolute paramount win for Lanning and this staff if they could reel this one in.
And another quick note, Justin, to add about DJ Pickett that I think makes him a bit more unique from some of the other guys that I talked to. Like we said, a lot of these official visits in June are going to be huge, and then guys are kind of going to go into decision mode after that. DJ Pickett plans to commit on October 5th. So you got a little bit more runway with this recruitment, if you will, than some of the other guys that we're talking about here. And he said he wanted to do that because he wanted to see how these guys played in season. And I think that if Oregon is capable of being the team that we all think that they're going to be able to, with all the talent that they've brought in, the coaching staff that Dan Lanning's assembled, it's hard to think of, LSU and Miami, they're going to be pretty loaded as well. But I think that could be kind of a sneaky factor that could help Oregon here.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks to, I feel, and I mentioned earlier, I think, Florida and Miami are kind of the two to watch for. I think what you said about seeing some of these teams perform in the fall, 100% hits the nail on the head for both of those schools, right? You want to see what Mario Cristobal is going to do at Miami, because it's been a little bit tumultuous so far since he got there. And of course, Billy Napier's on the hot seat. I mean, that's not a hot take. He's literally on the hot seat. Everybody knows it. You're looking at Florida to see what they look like this fall. So I guess if you're an Oregon fan, you're cheering for those two schools to not be very good, because it could be a factor in his recruitment. So I guess we'll you feel really good if you're an Oregon fan, because you feel like the Ducks are going to be pretty good this year. So at least there's that going for Oregon.
And the last thing I'll add about DJ Pickett here, Justin, it's like you've obviously covered recruiting longer than I have, but like I think in my time covering Oregon, they've been able to kind of flirt with guys like this and maybe get them out for some visits that they make, like, I don't know, like a top 10 or a top 8. But when it really gets down to, decision time, they're not realistically that much of an option. And I think that goes to a greater point that we've seen with Dan Lanning and what he's doing and the NIL era of college athletics, where Nike's able to lean into that Nike branding and really kind of help push themselves forward. If they can get DJ Pickett, I mean, that would be, I feel like, a truly game-changing type of talent.
Yeah, it's a gate opener. It opens the gate for, the 2026, 27 classes, for Oregon to, hey, look, we got DJ Pickett from Florida. Let's go get the next guy. You know what I mean? It kind of opens the floodgates. And that's what a Decorian Moore, does for you in Texas. Obviously, Oregon's recruited Texas fairly well under Dan Lanning and had some of those guys, and done, able to get some of the more talented 4-stars, but closing on a 5-star is totally different. When you're pulling a 5-star away from, mom and home and all that. It's totally different. But I do believe this, we're seeing a shift in recruiting, like you said, for two reasons: the NIL era, and what Dan Lanning's able to do relationship wise, and what they're providing, what they're proving on the field. I think a lot of these recruits now more than ever are looking at their recruitments as a business decision, right? They're looking at this like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere for 3 years, more than likely 3 years if they're a 5-star. And this is basically me setting myself up to get to the NFL. And so now you look at it more as a business decision, more than you ever have, versus, well, I'm going to go play it, at this school because it's an hour from my house and all my family can watch. Like, it's recruiting is different, and we're still learning. I'm learning. Like it's just so much more different than it was 5 years ago. Like it's crazy. And I think this is another element of that.
I mean, that last point is like, we could do a whole podcast on that. Like the amount of stuff that I learned just by being out there and not only talking to the recruits, but talking to other people, like Justin Wells at our Inside Texas site, like just absolute veterans that know about, how all this works and can speak to all that change. Like that was just invaluable. So it's a crazy time. But to couple all of that, the business aspect of it with Oregon doing what they're doing on the field, that's a recipe for success. Let's talk about some more defensive back recruiting, Justin. Let's stay in that secondary and talk about Trey McNutt out of the Cleveland area, Cleveland, Shaker Heights. He's one of the top safeties in the country. And we've said it before, Chris Hampton and the Ducks, they got to get one of these top tier safeties. You're looking at Trey McNutt out of Cleveland, Jonah Williams out of Texas, and then Fahim Delaney out of Maryland. He wasn't at the event, but he is another one of those top caliber safeties that the Ducks are going after. And I don't know if I feel confident enough to say that Oregon leads for Trey McNutt, but they are really, really in the thick of it with this recruitment, and he's a priority for them.
Yeah, really, again, another Oregon versus Ohio State battle is what it feels like right now. And I think, we probably both agree. I think if we were putting in a pick today, it'd probably have to be for Ohio State based on proximity, based on so many things. But it feels like Oregon continues to kind of chip away at that lead, if you will. And, and I've said this before, say again, I mean, Ohio State's doing a terrific job recruiting. They're not going to sign 5 stars at defensive back. Like, it's not going to happen. I mean, they've got 2 now, and they could certainly add more. But, I mean, at some point, Oregon's going to be able to eat, too, and get some of these guys. So, McNutt is unique to me because, we've talked about Pickett. We'll talk about others. He's the one guy that I think has some versatility in the defensive backfield. He's a guy that you could put at safety. You could put at nickel or star, whatever you want to call it. And he's a guy you could even, creep up to the line of scrimmage and have him, defend wide receivers. So a little bit of a different skill set than pretty much anybody else we're going to talk about just in how he plays. So yeah, let's say you go get Pickett and you're able to get McNutt, and let's say you land Fahim Delaney or another safety. All 3 of those guys would legitimately play different positions. You could put all 3 of them on the field at the same time. So I think Oregon's aware of that. And I think, McNutt's obviously taken an official visit to Oregon in June. I don't recall the date, or if I remember right, he might be the one that's saying I'm going to post the dates or whatever. But get him back on campus and keep chipping away at it, because I think Oregon's really closed the gap on Ohio State here.
And Trey was one of those guys kind of throughout the week, or I guess it was really just Tuesday was the media day that we were all just, full steam ahead talking to people. But like I mentioned, like with Mick, our Ohio State writer at Letterman Row, we were both trying to get a little bit more specifics on the visit schedule. And we know that Oregon's getting one, but we weren't able to get the date out of him. So, maybe he's a little bit more holding his cards close to the vest, which is totally fine. Everybody has it their own way, and you got to, respect the space there. But this is a guy that Oregon is really, really trying to get full steam ahead. You talk about Lanning relationship, Wadude, who we've talked a lot about. I mean, I've been banging the drum on how big Wadude is for this Oregon staff for a long time. You see McNutt sees the vision for a national championship, and kind of to use your phrase, chopping wood, like they're just showing him. I asked him, why is Oregon kind of still in the mix for you? And he said, because they're still showing me how bad they want me. So it sounds kind of crazy that Oregon has this legitimate of a chance of getting a guy out of Ohio from underneath Ohio State. But I don't really know how to describe it, Justin. Like, maybe you've heard a little bit of this, but like, it seems like there's been some smoke or some rumors that like his relationship with Ohio State isn't quite as strong as some people think. I want to say he might be a legacy there, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So I was kind of just mulling over while you were talking, like, how do I really present this? But like, that's kind of just what I'm going to put out there. There's not a lot of strong grounding in that, but maybe it's just something to keep an eye on here, as it does look like this is probably Oregon and Ohio State. I think USC is another one that's in the mix, but you're not too worried about them just with the way they're operating right now.
Yeah. I mean, this, if this kid's going to make a business decision, USC's probably, not really the best business decision if you're looking at it as a defensive back or any defensive player for that matter. But, I think, like you said, I think Ohio State's the team to beat. But sometimes there are kids that just want to get away for college. Like, I'm not saying that's the case here, but some kids are just more up for it. And like, man, I want to go experience a new part of the country or whatever. And then, there's some kids that like, nah, man, I'll get homesick. That's not for me. And that's just the way it goes. Kids are built different. It's not anything that the staff is doing right or wrong. It's just something you're going to have to identify and something, you have to kind of recruit through if that's the case.
One more guy that we're going to get to here, Justin, before we have to get you out of here on a Friday morning, afternoon, depending on where you're listening to this. Let's talk some O-line recruiting, because I know Duck fans always want to know about O-line, specifically in this cycle, because it feels like the Ducks are, I wouldn't say off to a slow start by any means, but it feels like it's been a bit trickier to gauge the guys that they've gotten traction with. We're talking about 2025 Louisville, Texas offensive tackle Michael Fasusi. He was one of the last guys I was able to get kind of at the 11th hour before I hit the road to come back to Long Beach. And the big development with him that we got on Thursday, and if you guys are on the boards over at Scoop Duck, you found out about it before anybody else. Michael Fasusi is going to be taking an official visit to Oregon June 18th through the 20th, so right before that massive weekend for the Ducks. And I don't think Oregon is in the lead here by any means. You're probably looking at Texas as one that's really, really there. But that's quite the development that they're going to be able to get that official visit, and now that we have a date for it.
Yeah. And, sure. Would you love to be the last visit and have him on June 21st? Absolutely. We know that would be the best case scenario. This is really next best case scenario. You're going to have him just before that weekend. Then he's going to usher off. I think Texas does have the last visit. So he'll leave Oregon, he'll leave Eugene and go to Austin basically directly and take that visit. And, the cool part about that, and I know I posted this on the boards, he's coming into town. He's basically one of one, at least that we know of right now. He's going to get one-on-one time with all of the coaching staff. He's going to get their full attention. And there's something to be said for that. I mean, when you've got basically Dan Lanning sitting there next to you for your entire visit, that's a really valuable recruiting tool. So even if they add another visitor or two, when you get those smaller groups, it's much more intimate and you're able to do a lot more things as a staff than when you have 7, 8, 9, 10 visitors on campus. There's pluses and minuses to both. But that's a pretty big plus there for Oregon with Fasusi. And like I said, you weren't getting that last visit, but you got the next best thing, which is the next to last visit. And keep in mind, 2 weeks ago, as little as 2 weeks ago, Oregon didn't have any official visit with him. So, really that's almost best case scenario.
Other schools to watch for, like we said, with Michael Fasusi, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and then he's starting his official visits this weekend at Missouri out in Columbia. Just to shed a little bit of light here on Fasusi before we get out of here, Justin. I mean, the dude loves the environment out in Eugene, loves being around Coach Lanning, Coach Terry, loves the body of work that Terry's already been able to put together. It's going to be a big kind of family decision, I think, for Michael, or like you really got to win over the family in this one. I remember I asked him just more stuff to know about him. The first time I talked to him, he said, I'm Nigerian. Education's super important for me. That degree is a big priority. But I think Oregon can check a lot of boxes for Michael Fasusi, and they may not be in the lead right now, but I think they have a great chance to really solidify themselves moving forward here for one of the most coveted offensive linemen in the entire country. Justin, any final thoughts before we get you out of here on today's episode?
I guess two things. I mean, with regards to Fasusi, I know everyone's expecting Texas to be really good this year. I mean, they're top 5, top 7 in pretty much every poll. But you have to wonder, are these recruits going to kind of notice if Texas isn't as good as people are expecting them to be, and what kind of effects that might have, because that could impact Decorian Moore and Fasusi and Dorian Brew and some of the others that, Oregon is trying to steal from the state of Texas in those battles with Texas. So, that'll be interesting to watch. The other thing, this is impromptu, but I'll put you on you also got another nugget while you were there from another 5-star offensive lineman, Ty Haywood, about basically being interested in Oregon. So that's another new development for Oregon fans to monitor, because like you said, I know everybody's really wanting to know about the offensive lineman. What'd you kind of think with that little chat that you had with Haywood on that?
Yeah, so that was like a little bit more of an informal thing. We were just kind of chatting. I wasn't recording or anything. But we were just, talking about the process. He said he only started playing as a freshman. Like, he just picked up football as a freshman, and the dude's a dude, like, already. So he's from the state of Texas, which is obviously huge for Oregon. But I was just talking to him, and I'm like, "You're not talking to Oregon, are you?" And he was like, "Oh, well, I mean, I'd like to visit there." More or less, that's kind of what he said. So I was like, that's kind of just something that makes your ears perk up. But I think the people, that's a perfect example, Justin. I think there's still so much time left in this class. Like, you really don't know how the things are going to shape out. June's going to tell us a lot, but there's so much time to really, ramp things up. So I'm going to see if I can dig some more and find some more on Ty Haywood. But hey, if he ends up on campus at some point, don't be surprised. We talked about it here. So the Ducks are still going after some huge names along the offensive line, but hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit of separation for someone that they really truly have a good shot with, with a decision timeline or a top 5 or whatever it is. So I'll continue hunting that one down, but that was a nice little nugget to get as well.
Yeah. And I love your point, because something we haven't talked about, and this could be an entirely different, a whole podcast, but it's May 31st. It's basically June. Even if guys commit to Oregon or they commit elsewhere, we have absolutely no idea what chaos might happen come December. We don't know which schools might, overperform or underperform. And the residual of that is which head coaches are fired, which assistant coaches are fired or leave for a better paying job. So, again, Michael Fasusi, maybe he goes to Texas. Okay. Well, maybe the Texas offensive line coach leaves in December or whatever and gets a better paying job or whatever the case might be. That's why these relationships matter. And that's why you, like you said, you continue to recruit them. Even if you lose out on every single one of these guys at the end of June or July, every one of these 5-stars goes somewhere else and you miss out on all of them. Okay. Oregon will stay on them, because we have absolutely no idea what the season will bring, what, injuries will look like, what jobs will look like, what coaches will leave. And the one thing that we've kind of learned under Lanning is a lot of coaches don't leave. I mean, if they do, we kind of know the reasoning, where they're getting a promotion or, maybe there's an ulterior motive by Lanning. But I mean, we haven't seen a lot of coaching staff turnover at Oregon, and that's going to be something that they will lean on and be able to sell. And if Oregon's able to have a good season, once again, Oregon's going to be able to circle back on some of these guys come November, December. So just because they go wherever else in July, don't completely cross them off the list just yet.
Always got to think about the long game, Justin. I feel like that's your point there. So a great note to end it on here with another great episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. And to be totally honest with you guys, we maybe got like a quarter of what I maybe got out in Nashville. So we're going to try to divvy it up and keep the content flowing over on Scoop Duck. If you guys want to find more of Justin, you can follow him on Twitter/X at jhopkinssd. If you want to find more of me, I am at Torres Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, trying to ramp up the Instagram presence a little bit and grow over there. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck YouTube channel. Try us out over on scoopduck.com for just $1. You don't want to miss it. It is the place to be for Oregon football and Oregon football recruiting. But a big thank you to Justin for coming on. Big thank you to you guys for talking some Ducks with us today. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.